welcome back. It is the Vegas Take Sharp and Shapiro. Thank you for joining us. We certainly are watching history in the making right now as the articles of impeachment have been given to the Senate, and Roberts is to be sworn in for the trial. So this is all going on right now. Crazy stuff, crazy times that we are living in. And, we always love having guests in studio, whether people disagree with me or not politically. And the woman we have with us in studio right now, she's got quite a story. She is the former Miss Nevada. How many people can you say are former Miss anything that are running for office? Not many, not many. She is also the daughter of a Vietnam War veteran and a Korean immigrant mother. And she has kickstarted her campaign as a Republican candidate back on July 29th. And she is now running for office, of course, as a Republican. Lisa Song Sutton joining us in studio. Lisa, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So I guess let me ask you this first question. What made you decide to run for office? Because that is a decision that a lot of people would have problems making, including myself. Well, because you're in the public eye. So what made you decide to do this?
Yeah, well, politics was never in the plan. I went to undergrad for, ironically, a political science degree, and then I went on to law school, but it wasn't something that I had kind of planned out for my future career goals. The impetus for it was starting the second location of my shipping store called Ship Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. We opened a second location right in the heart of Northeast Las Vegas, East Craig Road and Las Vegas Boulevard, right where it meets, right outside Nellis Air Force Base. And there, it was a blighted area. Abandoned Walmart is our next door neighbor up there. Mm-hmm. And opening up there, getting a chance to be part of that community and hearing from them that they weren't happy with the current congressman. I've always been a registered Republican, and I've, participated every 4 years in voting, but I was never like an activist. And so in talking to them, I'm like Googling, right? And I'm learning more about the current congressman for District 4. Mm-hmm. I'm learning more from our customers, constituents, about how he's gone DC on them. And
you're talking about Horsford?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's just people that just let me just give people a little bit of background. This primary is in June, and that's who you'd be facing. You'd be facing Congressman Horsford in November if you win. So talk to me a little bit about that.
So, that was really the impetus for it, was talking to our customers, hearing from them about how they weren't happy with the current representative and that, they wanted someone to step up. And I realized this is a huge opportunity to make an impact in a community that I care so much about and that I've always been part of, and yet I've always given back through the private sector. As a business owner, as a job creator, as someone who's done philanthropy and, participated in different boards, that's all I did during my time as Miss Nevada, United States. I did nearly 500 community appearances, traveling all across the entire state, volunteering in schools, reading in hospitals, working with every nonprofit under the sun. And I realized this is a truly tangible way to give back to the community in a way I've never explored before. So what does that look like? How do we do it?
So explain this to me then. If you are running against Horsford, why are you the person, and why do you think you would do a better job than he has done?
At the end of the day, it comes down to community engagement, right? You are literally, it's called the House of Representatives. You are a public servant, right? That is supposed to be your job. And I think there's something to be said for career politicians who, when they lose re-election, they go back to D.C. and become D.C. lobbyists.
Right.
It's just a different type of engagement in the community that perhaps there was early engagement early on in his political career, but at this point, at least the community is conveying that they don't see him around.
All right, so let's learn a little bit more about you. Let's talk about some policies. Obviously, as you know, I'm not a Donald Trump supporter. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I'm not a Democrat, but I there are certain things that I think we certainly need more security at the border. I'm with Republicans on that. I was with George W. Bush when it went to the death penalty. I have no problem with the death penalty at all. But let's talk about some issues that you may or may not agree with. Let's start, obviously, the October 1 tragic shooting where 58 people lost their lives.
Awful.
Terrible. We all could, any decent human being would agree with that. But let me ask you this. I don't think the president has done enough, and I don't think politicians have done enough. No red flag laws have been put on the books. No comprehensive, gun control has been put on the books. Mental illness. I think there's a lot of different issues that are into play here. There's not just one thing. Do you agree with me that something needs to be done as far as gun control, whether that is red flag laws, help with mental problems, or so on and so forth? What is your take on that issue?
I think mental health is a huge issue that's just simply not explored. Here in the state of Nevada, they have passed red flag laws, and they're going into implementation right now into 2020. And I mean, the feedback that we're hearing is that it's highly ineffective. I mean, we're seeing what's going on in Virginia right now as well. I think at the end of the day, you know, for me, so I grew up in a military family. My father gave me my first shotgun when I was 9, and that was one of the few arguments I remember my parents having.
Right. Yep.
You know, my mom goes, "She's 9," and my dad goes, "Exactly, she's 9." At the end of the day, at the end of the day, it's about firearm responsibility, firearm safety, and protection of yourself, your family, your property. That said, in relation to October 1, I think there has to be dialogue around what are all the different factors that come to the table. It's not just simply access to tools that could be used to harm others if it's in the hands of someone who wants to do harm. It's not just mental health. It's not just
well, I think it's all the above.
Right.
I agree with you. I'm just saying I don't think much is being done. So let's go back to the red flag law for a second, because I want to ask you about, I'll give you a specific situation. Let's just say, God forbid, you know somebody, a female friend of yours who's married, and the husband sends her text messages all day. They've been in fights maybe the last few days. The husband can be violent. He sends her text messages and voicemails saying he's going to kill her. Okay, so he shows up to the house. She calls the police. He's pretty serious. He's got bloodshot eyes. And he owns weapons. They take him into custody. If you've threatened somebody with their life, for the most part, if you don't have a record, you're going to be in and you're going to be out. Are you comfortable with that man in that specific situation being able to legally buy a firearm when he gets out of jail?
In that particular situation, of course not. However,
that's a red flag law.
But I would absolutely advocate that she has protection for herself, because let's face it, if someone does come to your door, whether it's someone you do know or you don't know, calling the police, there isn't just enough time. You can't say, "Stop, wait right there, I'm going to call the police." And then, give me a couple minutes.
Well, obviously, yeah, but I'm saying
people have to be armed. You have to be prepared.
Of course, and I agree with you on that. But you would be okay with some sort of red flag law put on the books so that guy at least gets some anger management help or gets mentally evaluated before he is allowed to buy a gun if he's threatening the life of, in this case, his wife. You would be okay with that?
I don't agree with red flag laws the way that they're written, especially the way that they're trying to implement them here in Nevada. There has to be reform, but there has to be a conversation around what does that actually look like in true implementation. That was one very specific example where perhaps something like that could have protected an innocent.
I think it certainly would.
But I think that also opens it up for retaliation. It opens it up for an opportunity for truly law-abiding citizens, people who perhaps are not in that same state, to result in having their firearms taken away for something that isn't a worthy cause.
Obviously, it has to be a worthy cause, and that's in quotations. I think, like I said, I think it's a case-by-case basis. I don't think you can just go to the police and say, "Hey, this person threatened me," with just no sort of proof or information and take guns away. That's not what I'm advocating.
Or say you're at a job and you don't like one of your coworkers and say that, my coworker said this about me. And to try to increase yourself or to, to get a raise at your place of employment.
Right. We agree on that. But when I look at the Parkland shooter, that kid, the police were called to his house 48 times, and
they were already aware.
Law enforcement failed. There's no doubt about that. Law enforcement failed there. But again, that's another example of if a red flag law, if a red flag law was put in place, it could have prevented that. And that's what we're talking about here. There's not one law or 10 laws that I'm going to say all mass shootings are going to be done with. Boom. No, there's no easy answer, no easy fix here. But when I hear that it's sitting right now on Mitch McConnell's desk, legislation that they could pass or at least work to pass, that bothers me. It bothers me that that's sitting on his desk, and he's taking meetings with the president, and he's more concerned about this impeachment trial.
And you think that he's not looking at that because of his relationship with the NRA, right?
I certainly believe the NRA is a problem, and I can give you proof of that. After October 1, the president was speaking tough on gun laws and AR-15s and assault weapons. He talked about that after the October 1 shooting in Vegas. He did some press conferences. He talked about red flag laws. He talked about everything. He said, we're going to do something about this. Then all of a sudden he meets with the head of the NRA, and all of a sudden his tone changes. The same thing happened in Parkland. The same thing happening over and over again. He'll speak tough on gun control for a day or two, and then he meets with representatives and the director of the NRA, and then he's like, no, we're not going to talk about that. Let's just talk about mental illness. I think anyone who believes that the NRA isn't influential in the least with our politicians is wrong. Am I wrong in thinking that, Lisa?
I think at the end of the day, that's what the American people are tired of hearing about, is that, whether it's special interest groups or PACs or, these different types of corporate entities on both sides of the aisle, the American people are tired of feeling like their politicians are bought.
Right.
And
on both sides.
On
I
both
agree.
sides.
I
yeah.
agree.
On
Yes.
both sides.
I agree.
And that's a large part of why I'm running, because, even if you look at my fundraising in Q3, I led the Republicans, which was very exciting.
Congrats on that.
Thank you. My average low dollar donation was $58.
That's great.
In Q4, we had donations from 44 states across the country. And so it just shows that there's, an opportunity for grassroots support, and it doesn't have to come from PACs or special interest groups.
And you bring up a good point. America is tired of their candidates being purchased, and Donald Trump, he really can't be purchased. That's one of the reasons why he's getting part of the backlash that he's getting, because he already has his own wealth. He doesn't. No one's going to buy Donald Trump. He's not. His net worth isn't going to go from.
And why is he afraid of the NRA?
$5 million to $180 million, like a couple of politicians has. He's already got a $2 or $3 billion net worth. He's already got his own personal brand, and so he doesn't need the help of lobbyists.
Maybe he can't be bought, but then explain to me why he keeps changing his tune with the NRA. I mean, I gave the perfect example. It's pretty evident that he changes his tune every single time he meets with NRA members. So maybe he can't be bought, but he certainly could be influenced.
That's because he understands that a large amount of his base supports the NRA.
Exactly.
Right.
There you go. All right, so let's move on. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Lisa Sutton. She is a Republican congressional candidate, and she joins us in studio. Let's talk about a few other national issues that we talk about on the show every day, and that is this impeachment situation, and now a trial in the Senate. What is your make on this whole situation when it comes to Donald Trump?
Well, just as we were talking about, before we actually went onto the show, getting out on doors and talking to voters, people are just so desensitized to this entire impeachment scenario. They're tired of hearing about it. They're tired of seeing it every day in the news. They want Congress and the government to get back to work for the people and to, start passing legislation and just get back to work. People are just really tired of hearing about it.
With that being said, that people are tired of hearing about it, what do you specifically feel about this? Are you also tired of hearing about it, or do you think that we should deserve to know the truth on whether the president withheld aid for political gain?
I think any time that there's a process in place to allow more transparency into government, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, I think that's important and absolutely should be explored. That said, it seems that this has been part of the Democrat agenda from day one, from the day that he took office. And that, to me, is ridiculous to try to use this process as that tool because they weren't happy with the way the election turned out.
All right, so let me pull back on you a little bit. The process, the conversation that Trump had, the president of the Ukraine, using a tool for gain, as you're saying. Do you believe that the president used his office as gain when he brought up the Bidens in that conversation with the Ukrainian president? Or do you believe the only reason why he brought up with the Bidens had nothing to do with personally the 2020 election and just everything to do with corruption?
I mean, I can't speak for the president. I can't speak on what he was thinking of at that time.
I'm not asking you to speak for the president.
You kind of are.
No, but I'm just, listen, she's running for office, and I just want to know her opinions on Donald Trump.
Right, I understand.
I understand you're a Republican, but there are plenty of Republicans just like JD. They'll say to me, and I call them reasonable Republicans. And the reason why I say that is this.
I can appreciate that, bro.
Well, this is why I say this. Let me explain myself real quickly. To me, a reasonable Republican, somebody, if they support Trump, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But they say they hate his rhetoric. They hate the things he says about women. For example, a couple weeks ago, he went after Nancy Pelosi based on her teeth. And for you as a Republican, it's ridiculous. It's laughable. And it's disgusting, in my opinion. We're not talking about policy now. We're not talking about politics. We're just talking about being a human being. And listen, if a Democrat said the same thing, I'd be criticizing him as well, him or her. As a woman, grab him by the P word. Okay, the womanizing, $120,000 payment to Stormy Daniels after having sex with her, we've learned months after his wife had a child. 2 weeks ago, going after the looks of Nancy Pelosi and her teeth. As a Republican, how do you feel about that?
At the end of the day, we're stronger when we are united. Mm-hmm. We have to support our president, regardless of who it was. When Obama won, I still supported the president. I still supported our country. I still supported the office of the presidency.
Sure.
And I think the important things that matter to the American people are what is this administration doing for the American people. And, I know there's a lot of arguments about how well the economy is doing and that kind of thing. But if you look at even further of all the different policy levels that have been able to be elevated and record low unemployment for women, African American, Asian American. I mean, every opportunity across the aisle has been elevated. There's opportunity, and people have more money in their pockets because of the tax cuts. Those are the types of things that I'm hearing on doors when I'm out talking to people about why they support this president. It has nothing to do with his tweets or his rhetoric.
So from your experience right now, you're getting the response that people are much more concerned with what he does and the policies that he's implemented, and the fact that the economy is doing well and the stock market hit 29,000 last week, and how it affects their life as opposed to to how he handles himself and the things that he says. It's more about what he does for them as opposed to what he says.
It's their tangible takeaways that they can actually see from this administration.
So, okay, I get that. So is it wrong for me to think in this way that if the economy's good and if unemployment numbers are down, that is not an excuse for completely disrespecting women, for going after immigrants, saying these people, they're rapists, they're bad people, and I suppose some of them are good people, which of course we know is not factually accurate. Is it an excuse to put yourself before the country? Because I could name you probably 100 times of when he did that. Am I wrong in thinking that way? I guess that's what I'm trying to ask.
I think everyone's entitled to their own opinion.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a free country. Mm-hmm. This is America.
Do you wish he would stop tweeting?
There are some tweets that I don't agree with. That said, like I said, at the end of the day, I'm focused on hearing what our community has to say, what the voters in District 4 have to say, and they support this president because of the tangible benefits that they're seeing. And it has nothing to do with what he's tweeting or the personal conversations he's having with other people.
Where has Horsford failed? Let's get back to some local stuff. Where do you think he has failed and some things that you can change here in Nevada?
Well, I just had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with one of the commissioners up in Lincoln County in Alamo, Nevada. It's part of the district. Mm-hmm. And he told myself and some of my staff that was up there, he told us a story about how there was a vote that was coming up, and he repeatedly tried to call the congressman's office for weeks. Couldn't get a hold of him. And finally, it got to a point where it was like the day before the vote was coming, and it was going to directly affect their PILT issues, their payment in lieu of taxes for the county up there. Mm-hmm. And he called and was just basically berating the assistant because he was like, all I'm doing is getting a gatekeeper of someone who's saying, oh, go ahead and send an email. And he's like, I'm the county commissioner here. This is directly affecting us. I want to get him on the phone so that I can explain to him why this is important. Why this is important to his voters and his constituents and his district. Why can't this man call me back? And that story just showed just how much frustration there is in the entire district, not just in Clark County, but across the other 6 counties that encompass this district. It's the largest in landmass in the state. The fact that there's unresponsiveness and just seemingly a lack of care for the community.
And I haven't even talked about the Clark County School District and all the issues in the school system. Maybe we'll get to that in a second. All right, let me talk to you about another big issue, sensitive issue. Obviously, Horsford believes in the woman's right to choose, and I agree with him on that. And there's probably a lot of people out there on the right that would disagree with me, as long as I believe a woman has the right to choose so long as she does it responsibly. What I mean by that is I do not believe in late-term abortion. That should never happen. I also don't agree with a woman that has 10 abortions. That shouldn't happen either. You shouldn't use abortion as birth control. That is my personal opinion, and I'm also very uncomfortable with old men putting these on the books. You know, for example, in Alabama, when they had these ridiculous laws that they were trying to pass, that a woman not only could not have an abortion, if she did, she could go to jail for up to 10 years. And if a woman is raped, God forbid, she should be forced to have that child. That's my opinion. What's yours on abortion?
Well, I was raised Roman Catholic, and so religion and pro-life is very embedded within my family. My personal take is that I think life should try to be preserved at all costs and really just be explored as much as possible. But at the end of the day, again, luckily, we do live in a country where, thanks to Roe versus Wade, there's opportunity if there are extenuating circumstances or if different life situations are happening.
But some Republicans are trying to change that, though.
And I think, Roe versus Wade, it's not going to get overturned. I mean, there's
They tried to do it in Alabama.
I highly doubt it'll
they
get
almost
overturned.
passed. They almost passed it in Alabama.
I mean, Alabama's obviously an exceptional situation. You had 12 60-year-old Caucasian men who passed that law, Brian.
Okay, so you agree with me though that if a woman is, God forbid, raped, that should be a decision she should have with her family. It shouldn't be a decision the government should make, right?
I don't think government should be making any decisions in relation to any of that. Absolutely, it's it's a personal choice in relation to extenuating circumstances.
See, you said it, but to me, you said it right there. A personal decision. And that is why for me, and I understand your take on it, and I respect that. And I would never tell you what to do if you were pregnant. I would never say, oh, well, you should get an abortion if you're not ready. Oh, you should. I would never talk to you like that because it is my personal opinion. You said it. It's a personal decision. So again, my question would be is why are Republicans, many of them, not talking about you, but why are so many Republicans out there trying to make it not a personal decision, make it their decision to say, no, you cannot have an abortion?
I mean, I can't speak for them, but it
seems you don't feel that way.
That it's simply just, it's a faith-based issue and obviously a very sensitive subject for some people.
Sure.
So
I understand. All right. Well, I think we agree on that. All right. Let's get your thoughts on gay marriage. I know we're hitting a lot of big topics here. Obviously, Mike Pence is someone that has been against gay marriage his whole life. His wife works at a school that does not allow homosexuals to work there or go to school there. I have no problem with 2 men or 2 women getting married. What do you say to that?
I am absolutely for gay marriage. I have no problem with that at all. Also, we live in Las Vegas. This is a place and an industry that's super welcoming. I come from a modeling and pageantry background.
Sure.
I have some wonderful friends who are a part of the gay community.
Would you call yourself a moderate Republican then? Is that fair to say? Because, I mean, some of your opinions are refreshing to me anyway. And why is it you think that they're the evangelical right that are so anti-gay? I think it's a fair thing to say. I think Mike Pence is anti-gay based on his voting record, but you're not. What would you say to somebody like Mike Pence when it comes to these issues?
Well, I think what people need to remember is that just like Democrat, Republicans have a gradient. It's not just you are Republican or you're Democrat, and these are the 6 things that you fit into, and that's it. Unfortunately, we do live in a country where this is this duopoly of Republican and Democrat. Right. It's just not it's not built like other countries where you have a huge gradient of different parties and there's an opportunity for all those different parties to perhaps hold office.
Do you agree with me that the 2 worst words in this country, in my opinion, are Republican and Democrat? And why I say that is I think people do things and make decisions based on what's good for the party and not what's good for the country. I'm talking about on both sides.
I think, unfortunately, oftentimes it's a label, to your point, right? If I'm coming in here as a Republican, and so as a result, there was perhaps immediate assumptions about where I stand on certain issues, or perhaps how I would be or how I would respond, and vice versa.
Yep.
And I think because our current system is so polarized and it's so toxic at times, that's why it's so important for people like myself who are these non-traditional candidates to come off the sidelines, right? I'm not a career politician. I'm not someone who's been an activist and part of the state party for the last 10 years. I've had my head down doing work. I come from the private sector. I've built businesses. I obviously am just engaged in the community on a philanthropic level with no political lean. And that's what's resonating with the community and with voters. They find it refreshing.
If you do win, if we can get Horsford in studio to debate you live on our show, would you be willing to do that?
I would love to sit down with him.
That would be a very interesting conversation. I will say that.
I agree with that entirely.
I think you would certainly be able to hold your own. Well, listen, I think you're a breath of fresh air. I'll be honest with you, because I'm not a Democrat or I'm not a Republican. But I think even though we might not disagree on everything, I think we agree on a lot. But I think that you're very eloquent in stating your points. My issue with people on the left and the right are the extreme. They will not listen to the other side. They will not come to the table and talk. We talked about gun control. I agree with you. I think we need to talk about all the issues. Both sides of the aisle are not doing that right now, and the job is not getting done. There's a lot of people on food stamps in Nevada. There's a lot of people on welfare in the state. We have a huge homeless issue. We only have a few more minutes left, but what's your take on that? The homeless issue in Las Vegas and the ordinance that Carolyn Goodman and her staff put in place.
Again, it's multifaceted. It's not just one reason, lack of beds or something like that. It's not just one reason for why we have this homeless issue. And that's what it takes. It's going to take people who are coming off the sidelines who are non-traditional, not career politicians, who are willing to work with everybody, right? Not just your own party. You have to be willing to work across the aisle in order to get things done for the people. So if your heart's in the right place, if your purpose is rooted in wanting to help the community, I think that's the outlook that everybody has to take regardless of party. And that's how we're going to get things done.
So we only got about a minute here left to go, and I want to give you the opportunity to give out your information. If people have a question or comment for you, if they want to donate to your campaign, and you know, I'm sure that you also have a website where you give out information where you're going to be making appearances and stuff. Can you give out some of that information and just how people can get involved with your campaign?
Absolutely. You can find me on social media at Lisa Song Sutton, and you can also head over to my campaign website, lisafornevada.com.
See, this wasn't too painful for you, was it? This is pretty simple, right? We did tackle a lot of issues, though, did we not?
Got through like 6 or 7 major issues.
I think I have a good understanding of Lisa and where she stands on all these issues. And I will say this right now. I would seriously consider voting for you. For somebody with my background, that I have not always voted Republican, I'll be honest with you, although I did vote for Mitt Romney. But you're someone I would certainly consider voting for. And I think this is also important that you grew up here, right? I mean, you've lived here for most of your life. You know a lot about Las Vegas. You know a lot about this state. And I think that is extremely important when people decide to vote. So I think you've represented this state very well. And I really, truly appreciate you taking some time to join us. And down the road, I hope you'll join us again. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. I appreciate that.
Thanks a lot, Lisa.
All right. Well, now we're going to switch topics. Are you a Vegas Golden Knights fan, by the way? I have to ask you real quick. Okay. Well, well, we're going to be talking Vegas Golden Knights next because they fired their head coach yesterday. And we have the poker. Well, I almost said the poker brat. That's Phil Hellmuth. We have Kid Poker, Daniel Negreanu, coming on our show next. He is a super Vegas Golden Knights fan, and he's going to give us his opinions on the firing of Vegas Golden Knights head coach Gerard Gallant. Our thanks to Lisa Song Sutton for joining us. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to the Vegas Take, 101.5 FM, 720 AM, KDON.